Programming Throwdown, Episode 68, Soft Skills with SimpleProgrammer. Take it away, Jason.
Hey everyone, this is a super cool episode. People might remember, when I said what was my favorite book a while ago, it was not, the awesome Ballstead book on statistics or things like that, or the AI book. It's actually Negotiating for Dummies. That's the book that's really had the biggest impact on my life. And so these sort of things are extremely important, and I'm really excited that we could dedicate kind of a whole show to all the other aspects beyond just learning to code, tabs versus spaces, arguing over Emacs, Vim, all these things, different languages. We also now have a chance to really dive into all the different sort of soft skills and all of the really important kind of career skills and really personal skills that can help kind of push people forward. And to do that, we have John Sonmez, who is the founder of SimpleProgrammer, which is a site where he talks all about this and he kind of indulges us in his expert information. So thanks for coming on the show, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm glad to be here and throw down.
All right, sounds good. So why don't you tell us, what is SimpleProgrammer? Why did you kind of start that, and where did that come from?
Sure. So what it is now is much different than what it was then. And the why I started it has changed into the purpose of it now. So to go back in time, I started it really out of two main motives. One was just because it was a passive aggressive way where I was at to get people to listen to me, because if someone reads something on the internet, it has a lot more clout, even if it's unpublished, even if you just publish it yourself rather than me saying it. And plus you get to finish your sentences in paragraphs. So so I was working on a Scrum team, and they were doing some things wrong, and I just thought, okay, I could just blog about kind of this stuff, and my manager and my coworkers will, they'll read this, and they did, and it did have a good effect. So that was sort of one of the reasons why I started the blog. And then the second reason was because I felt like too many developers were just priding themselves in taking the complex and making it more complex, or taking the simple and pretending like it's complex, like, because it gives you, I don't know, it's an ego boost. It makes you feel like you're more valuable than you are. And I was like, no, this is wrong, because we should really be telling people that programming is simple, and and we should be explaining things and making things simpler rather than more complicated, because at its heart, and I still firmly believe this, there's nothing really hard. There's things that in conglomeration are hard, but when you break things apart to the smallest pieces, they're usually pretty simple, right? I mean, I know I'm saying that with an extreme viewpoint, but in general, that's the case, especially in our field. So
yeah, I was talking to somebody today at lunch, and there's someone who actually, they used to work with me at a different company, and they just came to my current company, and both of us kind of had the same experience where when we left, we thought, we left on good terms, and we thought, I'm going to have to write all this documentation. There's so many things I know after, X years. And the reality is you leave and the company just keeps going as if you weren't even there, right? It turns out that when you get in the middle of what you're doing, it can seem like, it could seem like impossible for other people to sort of jump in. But the reality is that if you've kind of made things sort of, as you said, simple, and kind of broken things down and written some documentation, you've set up a nice path for the people who come kind of after you.
Exactly. Yep. I totally agree. It's funny how people have that guilt when they leave a company, like they're gonna. Trust me, it's not gonna crash into the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that was where I started out, and so my blog was. I didn't know what I was doing. Right. I just created this blog. Just wanted to get some of this knowledge out there, like I said, and it was technical content. Some of it was stuff based on Agile and Scrum that I was experiencing with the teams, and I was really just blogging, like, I think about 3 times a week, and that was all I really thought of it. But then some weird stuff started to happen. Like I'd start to get a bunch of emails, and all these opportunities started opening up. I got invited to do courses for a company, an online training company called Pluralsight, when they were first starting out. And that was a really good opportunity. I got phone calls from people wanting to hire me for jobs not to interview me for jobs, but to hire me for jobs because they read my blog, and I remember thinking, wow, this is just crazy. Like I wasn't intentionally going out there trying to market myself, but I did. And I just ended up going. I didn't remember the first podcast I did was Hansel Minutes way back then. It was like, Scott Hanselman was this big star to me back then, and here I was on his podcast, and all my coworkers were like, "Man, I heard you on Hansel Minutes podcast," and
That's awesome.
and I started to realize, I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I started doing some talks on how to market yourself as a software developer because I accidentally did this, and then I started intentionally doing it, and it was, my career was taken off. I spent 14 years honing my technical skills, and no one cared. but as soon as I figured out the soft skills, how to communicate and talk and do those things and market myself and build a brand, bam, everything started to take off. So that I gave a couple of talks, and people were just enthralled with that. I was talking to people after a conference and code camps, like 5-6 hours. No one was doing this content. And so, to fast forward to where things are now, what ended up happening was I started to realize that even though I had created a bunch of technical training content, I ended up doing that. I just ended up having all these great career opportunities. I started to realize that my heart was really for personal development and helping the developer, and that no one was doing this. There was this big hole in what you could call life coaching or personal development for software developers and soft skills, all of that, that's kind of rolled into their self-helpy type of things that people make fun of, but are really beneficial in life. And it was super beneficial in my life, right? I went from an introverted, shy, kind of afraid to talk to girls guy that was bold and out there and stop being lazy and conquering things and becoming an entrepreneur. And I wanted to teach other people how to do that. So really what SimpleProgrammer ended up becoming, and what my mission is now, I actually I'd say retired like 4 years ago because I hit my passive income goal, but then I decided I'm going to pursue this full time. And so SimpleProgrammer has really become the place where developers can go to improve themselves, to reach their potential as human beings, and to find fulfillment and happiness in their lives, not just from a technical perspective. So a lot of my content is out on YouTube and the podcast. I still have the blog that's still going, but yeah, that's basically it. And it's grown to a company. We've got 3 full-time employees and a few part-time employees. So it's grown to this huge, massive thing, and it's all based on that whole idea now of personal development for software developers.
Cool. That makes sense. One thing that kind of is amazing that a lot of people don't pick up on, when I read, let's say Business Insider or one of these kind of like, news, kind of mainstream news organizations, is this idea that if you look at what percent, a company such as Intel or Google or Facebook or any of these, Apple or any of these companies, the percent that they spend on their salary, on compensation, is at the level of the medical field. So it used to be if the companies that spent, let's say, 50% of their expenses on employee compensation, it used to be just doctors, lawyers, and just a few other kind of niche areas. And in all the other places, the majority of the expense was in, capital costs, so, maybe servers, or you're buying a power plant or something like that, right? But now with high tech, you have engineers who sort of are in that position where basically a company like Google sells, crackles of energy over the internet, right? And so
Right.
their biggest expense are their people, and also that's their biggest source of income. Like, it's entirely driven by people, and so that's why there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that people can grab in their personal life as software engineers, like just by sort of developing sort of this marketing, this negotiation, and sort of you can raise sort of your own value as an engineer. It's incredibly important. And it's something that, hasn't been typically afforded to engineers. As I said, it was something that was really not part of this profession. So we have a lot of catching up to do.
Oh yeah, definitely. You're very right. Especially there's a huge amount of opportunity. Especially, I always talk about the commoditization of software development, and it's really coming. I mean, when I hire developers, I hire developers on Upwork to do work for me, and I can get like. And here's the thing, and this is what it is if I can be very specific in what I want, and I can describe it really well, which most managers and project managers cannot do, I can get programming labor done for extremely cheap, like ridiculously cheap. But so what I'm saying is that it's no longer good enough to just be a programmer, right? It's writing code and the technology part of it. Yes, there's still a premium on it, but that's fading away quickly with the globalization, right? With a world economy. But what won't fade away, with the thing that's going to set you apart, the thing that's going to stop the commoditization from taking your job as a software developer, is going to be the communication. It's going to be the soft skills. It's going to be the personality and being the person that understands the bigger thing, that can run with the project and communicate to other people on the team. Right. That's the biggest thing that I think, and so that's why I think there is still this. And software developers that are highly valuable are more like doctors and lawyers, and so much spend is on salaries, because they're not really paying. I think personally that most companies aren't paying necessarily for the technical aptitude anymore, because there's a lot of that all over the place. But and this also goes to speak to why so many developers tell me, "Oh, why does everyone say that developers are in such high demand, but I can't get a job?" It's because no, it's not just programming, it's not just the technical skills, it's not just developers that are in high demand. It's highly functioning developers that not only possess the technical skills, but have the soft skills and the people skills, and those kind of skills that, in conjunction with those technical skills, those are the valuable ones. That's what everybody wants, and that's what's high in demand. Everything else will be commoditized. At least that's my prediction for the future.
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly possible now to build a brand with no resources at all. I mean, people know this. We've mentioned it. We have, now thanks to Patreon and some of these things, we have some funds. We can actually spend a little bit on advertising. But we went years without doing any advertising at all. Just 100% just organic, just putting out shows that we would find entertaining, really putting out shows for our children to be able to watch later if they're interested, listen to later. And it just kind of grew. The brand just kind of grew completely organically. And now more and more companies are looking at your GitHub profile, your Hacker News rank, or whatever. All of these things that kind of can represent you, that you can cultivate, without having a massive army of resources, or without having been like born into any kind of family or anything like that. As long as you have a computer, you can sort of build a brand. And that's also something that's kind of unique to maybe, this or the past generation, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got a similar, with SimpleProgrammer, we do maybe like, around $50,000 a month in revenue. And I have my advertising budget is almost nothing, right? We don't spend any money in advertising. It's just all organic. It all built up from me with a blog. I mean, like 7 or 8 years ago, and just pumping out content. And that's the thing, is like, if you create value in the world, you've got an opportunity now, right? I did, and I've done it on multiple platforms. On YouTube, I put out 2 to 3 YouTube videos a day, and that. Just by creating that much value, you're going to build a brand. Like if you're willing to do the work, I guess that's what I'm saying, is that you've got the opportunity like there has never been in the world before for someone to build a personal brand, to be an entrepreneur, but not necessarily even just to be an entrepreneur, just a programmer who builds their own personal brand, who builds a blog or creates some YouTube. I just interviewed a guy today who created a YouTube channel after doing some of my marketing courses, how to market yourself course, and in 2 years, he's built it up, and he's been getting all kinds of job offers and contract job. Like he's able to freelance without having to go out there and pound the pavement. And so like that opportunity is it's amazing that we have today to be able to do that. And I think so many developers aren't taking advantage of it. That's the thing that's like that I don't understand is, it doesn't take a huge amount of effort to build yourself a personal brand and to build a blog and to do some of this stuff. And the payoff is so great when you do that. One thing I always compare it to is like, if you've ever heard like a cover band play, right? Mm-hmm. And they play some song that is by some famous band, right?
Right.
And sometimes I go and I listen to a cover band and I'm like, they're better than the original.
Yeah. Sometimes, one time I went to a karaoke bar and there was a lady who sang songs better than the original. It was amazing.
Yeah, and so I did this enough time, and same thing with like celebrity chefs, and you can find this in a lot of places, and it's not like you don't, like I'm saying that you can get away with no talent, but what I'm saying is that the thing that differentiates the cover band from Metallica or whatever band is not the skill. It's not the skill, and it's the same thing in programming. It's the marketing. It's the style. It's that piece of it. And so I mean, you can't fake it. You can't not have the technical skills. But for so many developers, the greater amount of effort, if they spent more effort right now with the technical skills they have in developing a personal brand and learning how to market themselves, they would have a much greater lever than they would have by increasing their technical skills further. It's just like the cover band. It's the same phenomenon. Yeah. And I saw it in my career, and I've seen it in so many developers' careers.
That makes sense. I mean, I have a friend who he's actually pretty like successful. He's in finance, and but he had some trouble in his past. So he had some trouble with alcohol. And he got convicted. I think so, like a DUI. I believe is like a felony. I don't know the details, but basically, if you Googled him, you got mugshots.com as the first link. And he's saying, look, I paid some people that were supposed to take this off, and it did go off, but then Google found it again. And he's trying to sort of get these links off. And I said, instead of trying to remove, because it's Google, they're gonna find this somehow, right? So instead of trying to remove this, why don't you build just some, I mean, I didn't call it a brand at the time, but I said, why don't you just build a persona online and just cultivate that and post pictures and talk about finance and build something where people will know the modern you, and where that will be the people's first impression. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're looking for a job and you've had these issues, it's going to come up. Like there's going to be a background check and so on and so forth. The best thing you can do is build a brand, like project the version of you that you want. And that's kind of an extreme case where this person has this problem. But I think it could be advice given to everybody is there's effectively some type of noise about you right now. There is a brand. It's like effectively, let's say, random, whether it's good or bad. But you can take control of that by sort of building a persona for yourself online and turn it into something that you're really proud of.
Definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think the only thing with all this to caution people is that you got to use time. It's like the same thing as like investing. People invest money and think like, how do I double my money in the next year? It's like, you don't.
Oh, yeah,
or you gamble it and it goes away. So I think people look for this, like, I'm going to start a blog. I posted twice to it, and then I didn't get 1 million followers and a big exit. And it's like, well, no, of course not. You do it over years. Like, you post blog every day or once a week. You pick a schedule, but then you stick to it. And it's over a long period of time, you sort of get that compounding interest effect. I mean, I guess we'd have to think about it economically and puzzle it out if it truly is a sort of exponential thing. But it in my head, it sort of maps that way, which is like you do these things over the course of a career and you build a brand. It isn't that you can't buy the marketing, you can't buy the spot in Google, but posting enough things over the course of, a year, 2 years, that's very beneficial. And it shows, employers' consistency, right? Like if I go to your website and it looks like you threw it together last night, or your GitHub has one, project on it that you committed to once, that's not actually that interesting. But if you sort of are doing little bits of effort over the course of a very long period of time, then it's like, wow, I see much more of a better picture of this person.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think a lot of people have goals. And I mean, goal is just a word. I don't want to say I'm against goals because it's kind of like being against Christmas or something, right? But I feel like it's better to have a system than a goal. Like, for example, this year I really wanted to declutter my life, right? And so I could say I want a goal to declutter, but it's really hard to. The other thing about goals is they're kind of designed for you not to reach them. Like, have you ever seen one of these charity goals where they just meet it and they say, we're done? No, right? They always set the goal to something they know they're not going to reach, right? So instead I said, look, every day I'm going to go through my email and I'm going to unsubscribe. If there's something that I can unsubscribe from, I'm going to do it, if I'm not interested. And so I created this sort of system, and it became kind of a metaphor for kind of unsubscribing myself to things at work that I'm not using anymore, things. But that became kind of like that system became an anchor for other things. And the podcast is kind of the same way. We really wanted to educate. And for the first maybe 2 years, it was just, our moms listening. And that was fine.
Oh, my mom stopped listening.
That's true, mine too. And it was fine because we had this sort of system, and we were building stuff that we were kind of proud of. And then eventually, we had this sort of geometric increase in the number of people. But yeah, it's as Patrick said, it's really important. Just kind of, you could obviously have a vision for what you want your future to look like. Like in the case of my friend, he obviously wants to have a future. We can go on Google, type his name, and get really nice things. It's fine to have that projection, but yeah, it's really important to build sort of the system that's going to ramp you up and take you there.
Oh yeah, there's a book. If you haven't read it already, I'm sure you would love it. It's by Scott Adams. It's called How to Lose at Everything and Still Win Big.
Okay.
And in that book, he basically, and it's the same mindset that I have, what you just described, which is he says, don't use goals, create systems instead. And that has been the secret to my success by far is creating systems. And again, to what you guys talked about the whole, it takes time, right? I mean, the whole, I always say consistency, commitment, persistence. That's the formula for success, because you have to be consistent. You have to, you can't just release random podcast episodes or your YouTube videos or blog posts, right? And you have to be committed. You have to do it, rain or shine, whether you've got good content or not. I mean, sometimes I make YouTube videos, and it's like, if I'm doing 2 to 3 YouTube videos a day, I'm not always in the best of spirits. Sometimes I don't have any wisdom to share, and I'm like, wow, this is going to suck, but I'm going to release it anyway because I'm going to suck in public, right? And
I don't know. Our podcasts are always awesome.
Yeah, right. I think it's important, to be authentic too. I think some of the times where, we've recorded sometimes where one of us was sick or down or something like that. And of course, sometimes it comes through. But I think actually the time where you sort of struggle, people kind of pick up on that. And they say, and I feel like sometimes that actually builds a way stronger relationship than the 99 other shows where everyone was healthy and fit.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, 100% agree with you. One thing that has really helped me, especially with the YouTube, is just focusing on, I've got to post on my board to be genuine, always genuine, and it's so important. You have to show some of your vulnerability, right? And vulnerability and weakness are two different things. When you show vulnerability, it actually shows strength, because if I did this video and I was talking about in Braveheart, where they turn around and they lift up their kilts, right? Yeah. Showing their butt. So they're making themselves vulnerable to their opponent there, right? So you don't reveal your butt to your opponent and where they could hack at it unless you're feeling pretty strong. And so when you show that vulnerability, it actually shows a lot of strength, but that connection, it also shows that you're human, right? I think, and that's the key thing, is people know that you make mistakes, or you want people, especially if you want to inspire people. One thing I've learned, in the self-development, is that I can't just be look how awesome I am. I have to be I'm just like you. I'm just like you, right? I screw up just like you. I still screw up just like you, but there's a difference, and I'm getting to where I want to get in life, and I can show you how to do it too. Here's my hand. Let's go together, as opposed to, oh yeah, you guys suck and you're doing it wrong, and I never do anything wrong. That That's not a way to teach. It doesn't work in any kind of field. But to show that, to be genuine, to show that vulnerability, to say, look, hey, this is me. It's cool. I screw up all the time too in school, but we'll get there together. To me, that's always been even teaching technical content. I found I did a bunch of courses for Pluralsight, and I found that was the thing that helped set my courses apart, was the fact that I'm willing to make some mistakes and own up to them, and just, hey, I'm your buddy here. Let's figure this stuff out together.
Yeah. So one thing that's always kind of a tricky thing, but I'd love to hear your insight is, if you're, for example, I'm trying to get back into running, and so I bought one of these watches that measures your heart rate, and so I'm getting kind of better every week, and I can measure it, right? Or if you write code, you can kind of feel yourself getting better. You can measure it, lines of code, or more ambitious projects. These things are generally kind of pretty easy to measure. Your wealth everyone measures that every time they go to pay a bill or something. But some soft skills like negotiation or maybe the ability to strike up a conversation with a stranger or something. Some of these things are kind of hard to measure. Your nonverbal communication. So how do you go about, how do people know that they've taken your advice, applied it? How do they know they've actually improved? That's
a good question. I mean, it depends. I would go kind of back to the goals, honestly, again here, in saying that, to zoom out a little bit on this picture of what are you aiming for, right? Sometimes I think that we aim for, it's not the goal, right? So I've achieved goals. Like I had financial goals, I hit those, fitness goal. I've achieved a lot of the goals I set out in life, and I have found that on the other side of a goal is usually disappointment, and sometimes, honestly, like you can go into depression because you made your life about this thing, you got there, and now what? And I've learned a lesson, from doing that. And what I've sort of realized is that it's never about for me, all the things I'm aspiring to do now are all about the kind of person that I become in the process of achieving that goal or going down that path, the goal that I never really achieve, right? It's about, and so what I would say is that, a long way to answer this question, but where I'm getting at with this is that for these kind of skills, for these kind of soft skills, I mean, so if I could give you a badge and say you're a level 10 negotiator, ding, what did that really get you, right? It's like, okay, so it's more of a, I look at it in terms of I want to maximize my potential, and I want to show you how to maximize your potential. And to be honest, like I was doing this video just the other day because I went and I got my body fat measured at the gym. And most people. Wait,
hang on. How do you do that? What does that mean?
Oh, like where they check your body fat level?
Is that like where they? Because I know there's BMI, right, where they weigh you and they get your height and they do some math. But is this sounds like something like more sophisticated?
There's a lot of ways to do it. The way that they did it at the gym was using calipers. So it's a skin fold caliper that checks the thickness of your skin at different points.
Got it.
And of course I've got, I've done a DEXA scan, which is like a dual radio image rescan. They use it for like bone density. Okay. I'm doing one on Saturday. But when I went there, I mean, most people, like on my YouTube channel, guess that I'm probably like 7.5%, 8% body fat or so, and that's where I kind of pegged myself. And the guy measured at 11%, and I was talking about how man, I could be pissed, right? I could be like, oh, that's not right. You measure it again, right? Or I could be excited about that and be happy that, man, if I want to get down, I've got more room to go. There's more low hanging fruit than I thought, right? I feel like I look great now. I can look better, right? So my point of it was I talked about this idea of when you measure something, when you measure a foot, use a 13-inch ruler instead of an 11-inch. Right? Although we want to go through life and we want to use these 11-inch rulers to measure a foot, we want to stretch it and say, oh yeah, I got it, I hit the goal. Look, my net worth is $1 million or whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. But use the 13-inch ruler, so then you got it. And that's how I feel about some of these things that are hard to measure. It's like okay, have I overcome, I do a lot of coaching for guys, like dating coaching, and teach them how to go, and I'll just put it plainly and say pick up chicks, but
Right.
to go in and overcome their social anxiety, right? To be able to go in and talk to women, it's difficult for guys to do. A lot of guys in our field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like, whether you got it or not, whether you're afraid or not, right? Deep down, for a lot of things, we could use we could use a measure and say, oh, like I said, we're measuring with the ruler, and we could say, oh yeah, I'm here. But it doesn't matter, because that's that goal thinking, as if having some number, as if my body fat were 8%, if that would now magically make me, right? What I'm ultimately trying to do is look good when I look in the mirror. That's the ultimate perspective, right? That's the ultimate thing. And so the same thing, it's like an integrity issue. It's not something that you can necessarily measure from an external viewpoint, but you know it. You know where you're at, and you know if you're improving, and you know if you're faking it, and you could lie to the world, and you could appear to be super successful, and you could appear to be progressing in all these areas, but if deep down you know that you're not where you want to be or where you should be, that's your integrity. That's the thing that counts and matters in the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think
the goal. So.
I think it's super important to be honest with yourself. That's one thing that, that's kind of like a slippery slope. It's kind of hard to come back from. But it's really important to kind of stay there. Yeah, and personally, I use a lot of sort of these proxy systems. Like, for example, to give another example, there was one time where I decided I really wanted to look people in the eye when I was talking to them.
Right.
And I could just kind of say that, but it's hard, especially when at work you're super busy. It's hard to really make that a priority or keep it in your mind. So I said, I'm going to, when I'm at, say, the grocery store or the bank, or I'm at one of these situations where I'm paying for something, or someone's providing me a service. When I sign the check, or when I sign my name on the bill, or whatever it is, I'm going to look the person in the eye at that point. Like, I'm going to make that kind of a conscious part. And I know that, I could have my head in the game at that point on, focusing on that one thing. And then again, like, make that, if I can do that consistently, then that will sort of spread to, because a lot of what we do is unconscious, right? You talk about
exactly
nonverbal communication. You talk about even, maybe the way you say things, the way you dress, the way you conduct yourself. Life is just, there's so much going on in life, and you can't really be conscious of all of it, right? So the vast majority of it is just your brain is just unconsciously doing things, everything from walking, breathing, and then even higher level things. It's like if someone throws a baseball at you, what you do is just reach up and you catch it, like instinctively, or you block your face or something, right? And so you need to sort of develop those same unconscious instincts. So when someone's, asking you a super tough question in an interview, that your sort of unconscious memory will kick in, and you can maintain the eye contact, be friendly, be positive, even though you're flipping out because you have no idea what, like, MySQL is or something, right? So that's where I think, setting these sort of proxy goals, especially in situations where you have a lot of control, such as in the case where, if I'm signing my name and handing it to somebody, I don't have to think about a lot of other things. I can sort of control where my eyes are. Then that can sort of give you the unconscious ability. It's kind of like, if you ever take, I used to teach Taekwondo, and, a lot of Taekwondo and self-defense and these things are to give you that unconscious ability. So when somebody kind of grabs you, your unconscious brain kind of just takes over. You react, you immediately do the thing you need to do, and then you can consciously do the more important thing, which is run away or something like that.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. It's funny that you say that about the eye contact too, because I had this exercise again for overcoming social anxiety, and I had different levels of it. And one of them was, I did this video and I was talking about how, like, and I did this myself. I would go and I'd go for a run, and I would make eye contact with people, and I would not be the person to break it. And I would, and the other rule was that you couldn't smile or nod your head, because those were both signs of kind of weakness, of deference, right? And so you just had to, like, not like angrily staring people down, but you just had to realize that there's no reason why you should break eye contact first. You can control the frame if you choose, and you have the power to do it. And this is uncomfortable, but I strongly believe that the only way to grow, everything that makes you grow in life, is something that's uncomfortable. And so I did that exercise myself. It made me feel real uncomfortable at first, and a lot of people that subscribe to my channel did it. And what we found from this was that now it just became, now we mastered that, and we had it in that specific context, like you said, and now we just have the power to do it. Like, you don't even think about it. It's not even a thing, because you've done it in such a difficult situation. And I took it to some different levels of some other things, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's one of those things, like, you practice it over and over, and then it becomes, again, same thing. Even I'd say, like, when I just shot some videos today, and I'm walking down the beach, with my phone, and there's tons of people around. I'm just talking to my phone, but I've done it so many times now that I'm not saying that I'm not self-aware at all, but it was uncomfortable at first, but then it became a thing that became normal, and now I can do it. But you got to step out of that comfort zone if you want to be able to expand your ability in any of those areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you think, if you had to pick just one thing, maybe from your entire website, just one lesson that you wanted people to follow, like the most important, the most underdeveloped soft skill for software engineers, what do you think that would be?
Shoot, this is a tough one, because it's going to change from day to day for me, like right. Just from my perspective, right? I like to talk about looking at things from a different perspective, but the one that I fall back on a lot, even though it's not super exciting, like, I want to say something more exciting, but honestly, I think this is the most valuable skill in life, period, is the ability to teach yourself, is learning how to learn. If you develop that skill, and it is a soft skill, because there's not a technical way to do, it's not learning one thing. It's the ability to acquire knowledge, the ability to self-educate, to teach yourself, right? This is one of those things that it's so, like, if you can do this, and a lot of people think they can, but they can't, right? What they can do is they can go find teachers that tell them what to do, and that's not the same thing as teaching yourself. But if you can honestly figure out how to teach yourself, how to learn, then the doors of the world open up to you. Like, there's nothing that you can't do. You want to become an entrepreneur, you want to build a business, you want to get this job, you want to learn this. So many people, the people that, and you could go to the whole mindset, the fixed versus elastic mindset viewpoint on this. But essentially, the people that I know, and I've had this experience a lot from YouTube, just because of the kind of people that are on YouTube sometimes watching my videos and commenting on them are not the kind of people I would normally associate in daily life. And some of those people, their problem is very, very clear. They have a very fixed mindset. They don't know how to teach themselves. They don't believe it's possible. So much of life is shut to them. They have no ability to change a lot of their situation in life, because they can't see it, because they don't have that skill. If they had that one skill, if they could just teach themselves, if they figured out that they could do that, everything would open to them. And the people that I see that are most successful in life are people that you basically would say, or the kind of people that would say, well, you know what? If I needed to become a lawyer, I could become a lawyer. I could probably do it in a few years, and yeah, sure, doctor, fine, whatever. Those are extreme examples. But programming language, yeah, I could learn that programming language, right? Every single thing that that you could possibly throw at them, they're like, yeah, I could do that. There's no reason why I couldn't do that. I could learn that, and it's because they have that ability. They've taught themselves how to teach themselves, honestly. And so I would say that's really the most valuable thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I always find it kind of interesting when there are jobs that, there might be a job that's, building the Java virtual machine for Oracle. Well, I'm sure you need to be a Java expert, right? But there's so many jobs where they're building a website and they say, need to know Java. And I bet if you went there and you said, look, I have never done Java, I've done PHP, but I could probably pick it up in a couple of weeks. I mean, they would at least give you an interview. And so I think, a lot of it is, as you said, is sort of knowing that that you're much more malleable than you think, that you can learn anything, and being able to project that to other people, I think, is super important. So what about, let's say there's a college student, CS grad, has all the technical background, but someone like Patrick or myself in college, I only worked, my first job, I was doing Taekwondo. I taught Taekwondo, and then I did Taekwondo in the Mulan parade at Disney. So I would just break boards. I'd pretend to be a Chinese Mulan soldier, right? And so you get college students who have, they have all the technical background, but from the workforce, their experience in the workforce is, selling popcorn, right? So what's the best advice you could kind of give them to get started in industry?
So, I mean, I think there's a few ways to look at this, right? So the advice I'm giving most young developers now or want to be developers is to really go out on your own and figure out. I mean, it depends on which path you want to go, but there's opportunity now to don't go into debt. Don't get shackled with a big car payment and house payment. Figure out how to limit your means as much as possible, because that's how you gain freedom, right? So I would say that, from the bigger perspective, I always talk about the idea that you've got this mortgage on your life, right? And we're all born with a mortgage on our life. And the less, as soon as we may have enough income that we can pay all of our upkeep costs, right? Mm-hmm. Then we're free. We have freedom. We can do whatever we want, essentially, right? And so I would say that if that appeals to you, think about that. You could do that. Now, as far as the more traditional route of going, you say, no, John, I really couldn't care. I want to make a 6-figure developer salary. Okay, well then my advice would be a little bit different, which would be essentially, don't assume that you have to do everything by the book and by the rules, right? So there's so many ways to get a job. And the best way to get a job is not to go on to Monster or whatever the Dice or whatever the job search boards are and apply for 500 jobs with the same resume and cover letter and then hope that some people call you back and get interviews. That's not it. I mean, that if you're going to do that, you could do the numbers game. If you're going to do the numbers game, then I would say, hey, treat it like a sales, like a sales funnel, and and measure the metrics. And I've got some sections on my new book on how exactly to do that. But I honestly would rather see young people figuring out of the box ways to do this. And what I mean by this is what about going and going through and setting up coffee with just some managers or just some developers that work at various companies that you want to work for, and not ask them for anything, but just ask them what you could do for them, or just hang out and just get some, build up your network that way. What about going and what about you got a company you really want to work for? What about building a tool for that company, right? That makes some product that they're using more efficient, or that improves their website in some way, or something where they're going to hire you because you did something that's actually you immediately have value from the beginning. What about going and doing what a lot of really successful salespeople do, and calling the CEO of the company and just asking his secretary to put you through to him and talking to him and just saying, hey, I'm a software developer, I'm a new developer, I wanted to just, if I could get 5 minutes of your time, just and pitch it, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways. I'm throwing out some crazy stuff here, but because so many people think that what they have to do is they have to put in their resume, and they have to go through HR, and they have to have these keywords, and then they go to the interview. And it's not like that at all. I mean, some of the best jobs I ever got were jobs where someone called me up and said, hey, come work for us, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it definitely is something that, I think to extend on that, don't think your first job is going to be your whole life. I mean, my father worked the same job his whole career. My father-in-law worked the same job for, I think, 50 years. But now things have kind of changed, especially in our field. And it doesn't mean you should really go into your first job saying, oh, my goal is to get out of this job, right? But you kind of go into it, think of it as a bank where, you want to deposit a lot of your effort and time, but you also want that deposit to mature and to grow and get interest, right? And you want to be able to withdraw more than you put in. And through building the right connections, and through, developing some of these soft skills, also developing some of the, the technical skills as well. Through all of that, you can, either advance in that job, or if you find one that's better later on, you can switch, and you can hopefully switch with having gained some interest on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's all about that long-term perspective, right? Because you realize that you're not probably going to be there forever, and times have changed. It really has changed. A lot of times, in fact, what I found is that a lot of times today, the only way to make an advancement in your career is to switch, is to move, right? A lot of it used to be frowned upon to like job hop. Not saying that you should switch jobs every 6 months, but every couple of years, that is not necessarily a bad idea. If that sometimes that's the best way to scale up the ladder.
Yeah, and again, it's one of these things that should be natural, right? I mean, you can't go into it saying, in 2 years I'm going to either get a promotion or be somewhere else. It's more just, as I said before, you're depositing this time and this effort, but you're also kind of being self-aware, and if an opportunity comes up, there's going to be a chance that the opportunity will be in your current job, but there's also going to be a chance, probably a much greater chance, that opportunity is going to be somewhere else in this very large world, right? And so, it's important to make sure that you sort of honor your obligation. You can't just leave after 6 months. I mean, they're hiring you because they want to ramp you up, and then you have to put in that deposit, right? Otherwise, you're not going to withdraw anything. But right. I think the self-awareness is extremely important. What about, so we have a lot of people listen to the show who they're kind of on the other side of the fence. So they might have incredibly good soft skills. They also have an incredible ability in some area, let's say biology or chemistry, or maybe they are a carpenter, or they have sort of a discipline, and they've put many years into that, and now they want to switch. They want to go into CS, right? And so they have the industry experience, but they're kind of transitioning to kind of a brand new field, right? And so they're kind of in a different boat than the college student. What kind of advice would you give them?
Those are my favorite developers. First of all, the best developers I've ever met and worked with have always been those kind of people that amazingly, that after a career 20 years as a biologist, or there's a guy I worked with that was an environmentalist of some sort, and then they become a developer, and in the short 3 years that they're a developer, they're as good, or it's like they have 10 or 15 years of experience. And I haven't really been able. It was a strange phenomenon that eluded me for such a long time. But what I think about this is that when you achieve a mastery level in one skill, even the stuff that doesn't seem like it carries over, it carries over. It carries over because you've maybe it's just the time and the dedication and the grit that you've developed in becoming a master at something, but it does. It really does. And so what I would say to them is that they have a distinct advantage for multiple reasons. One, because if you've already been successful at one thing, I mean, and you see this all the time. You see people that are super successful in multiple areas, right? Because success begets success. And so what I would say to them is you have an advantage because of that. So it's going to be easier for you, right, than most people. And then second, you've got another perspective that is extremely valuable, right? Not coming from the whole. Sometimes we can be cynical and jaded in the software development community, and we don't see things because we're too much in the water. We're too much, in the thick of it, and everyone has the same opinions. And so bringing in those outside opinions, seeing things from a different perspective is really awesome and is very, very valuable. And you end up making a really valuable member of the team because you have that perspective. So I would say that, it seems overwhelming, right? There's a lot of stuff to learn. And yes, there is a lot in software development. And yes, it can take you, years and years to achieve what you're never going to like totally master it. And technology completely changes, but have a little bit of more confidence than you might have and dive in and pick. And the key thing, especially when you don't have 20 years of career maybe left or whatever, is that you be very specific about what it is you want to do and what you want to learn, right? Because within software development, there's so many things. There's so many technologies and programming languages and Java. You could spend your entire life learning JavaScript frameworks, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And it would be a treadmill that you'd just be slipping backwards on. So rather than trying to learn everything and trying to know a little bit about everything, be very, very specific. Say, I'm going to be a mean stack developer. Good. Learn all of everything in that if you're going to do full set, right? Or be very, pick a specialty, be very specific, pick exactly the skill set that you need to learn in order to do that and be functional. And you can fill in the gaps and the other stuff later. You'll eventually you'll eventually do better if you do pick up that CS background that a lot of CS students have, but they forgot anyway. You need to know if you know what's how to the algorithms and data structures. It is actually pretty valuable, but don't start with that stuff. That's not going to help you immediately, right? And you won't see the value of it until you're actually working as a functional software developer. This is why our colleges are so messed up is today in the way that we teach developers is because we start with the basic CS stuff, which you don't understand the value of until you're actually working as a developer for a couple of years. And then you go back and like, oh yeah, oh, okay, man, now that makes sense. Like using that hash, that's why I would use that, right? And so then the stuff sticks. So I would say, just jump in, but be very specific about what you're jumping into, so that you cut that down. It can be overwhelming with all this stuff out there, but you don't have to know it all, and no one can know it all. Even veteran developers that have been around for 20 years, trust me, they don't know it all. They know a very small fraction of it, but that's all you need. You only need to, there's so many. We're in a field where there are 5,000 tools 5,000 different kinds of hammers, right? Mm-hmm. And you only need to know how to use one of those hammers, and you can hit your nails. You got to have a few more tools in your tool belt, but don't feel like you have to know all this stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's some kind of like beam search where basically, I think if you don't have a background in CS and you don't have the degree, then people aren't going to give you the same sort of cushion that they'll give someone with a CS degree. I know people who have a CS degree. I'm almost guilty of this myself, where it's all purely theoretical, and some of us have done coding, had done coding on the side. But I know some people who, their CS degree was totally on the chalkboard, and those people are afforded a cushion when they interview and things like that, because people know that they spend a lot of time on this theoretical, and companies are expecting to have to kind of pay a price up front, having to ramp this person up on, C++ or something. But in exchange, they'll get someone who has sort of a good growth in the tail, like in the future. If you don't have a CS degree, then it's going to be hard to get a company that gives you the same sort of cushion. But that's where, as John said, you can kind of be really specific and become kind of really proficient in one thing, get that first job, and then you can really broaden your horizons then, and look at sort of how that thing you learned fits into the bigger picture and all of that. What do you think about, we get a lot of emails that are sort of, should I go back to college or should I do this boot camp? And Patrick and I, we interviewed Art Gillespie from Udacity a few months ago. And Udacity is a pretty cool program. But in general, we haven't, at least Patrick and I haven't seen a lot of people in the places we've worked or in our contacts, like who have come from sort of these kind of boot camp environments. Most of the people are either self-taught or from university. And so we're kind of torn because on one hand, something like Udacity, Coursera, these kind of things are kind of revolutionary. And I'd love for MOOCs like this to succeed. But on the other hand, it really kind of hasn't happened yet. And I feel like you will probably have a broader vision than Patrick and I, who we basically live, 5 miles away from each other. So what do you think in kind of a more holistic way? Do you feel like these bootcamp classes are valuable? Are they a scam? Are they somewhere in between? Is there a huge variance? What's kind of the landscape like?
That's a great question. This is a question I get all the time. In fact, the new book that I'm putting out, I put the very first portion of the book is like, should I go to college? Should I go to boot camp? Should I self-teach? Right, because it's such a critical question, and then how to succeed at each one of those. But here's the thing: I'm very bullish on boot camp as a choice, based on a couple of parameters that I have to set up front. First of all, it's based on, I think that it's the best bang for your buck if you do it right. And it just makes sense to me today, right? Like I rather, if I were starting out today, I wouldn't even go the self-taught route, simply because it takes more time and it's harder to figure out what you need to know, right? If someone can give me, a really intensive, like I think of an immersion program, and just get me working as soon as possible, that's great, because then that's the beginning of my education, but I can get paid while I'm getting my education the rest of the way. And so I think that is definitely the promise of boot camp. Now, in reality, does this happen? Right. So in reality, what we're faced with is a landmine of, there's some crappy boot camps, of course, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to judge the level of some of the boot camps, and it's sort of in between, right? College, you go to college, they tell you what to do, right? Like it's completely tell you what to do, right? Boot camp is they're giving you, but they're giving you the instruction, but it's sort of really very much up to you, right? I mean, you've got this time, and you can decide how you're going to use that time. Like, are you really going to hunker down and learn what you need to learn? And then, for self-instruction, it's if you need some kind of structure, self-instruction. I mean, I know a lot of developers that have been self-instructing for 4 or 5 years, and they haven't even create a resume or apply for any jobs. So that's, it can be an issue. But what I'd say with bootcamp is first of all, it's a very cheap alternative, right? So the advantage of bootcamp is, like I said, it's short learning curve, getting you a job very quickly, and the investment is relatively small. So don't cheap out, right? If you're going to do a bootcamp, don't price shop the boot camps. Go and pick a quality boot camp where people have graduated and they have a high placement rate, and then go and call their references and check and see. Okay, so that'd be my first piece of advice. Then the second thing I would say is that, here's the thing: as long as it's a decent boot camp, think of it this way, okay? If you're the top person in the class, let's say it's a 3-month program in that boot camp, if you're the top person, do you think you'll get a job, right? Probably, and you'll probably get a good one, right? I mean, a boot camp would be really, really crappy if the best person in the boot camp didn't get a job. They would have to be.
Their homepage would look so sad, right? I mean, right. Their homepage would be, look at Jim, he's on the street.
Exactly, right? So you got to assume. So I would assume that the top 10% of people in a particular class are going to almost like have like a 90% chance of getting a job. If you've filtered, okay, right? I mean, I think, and that's a pretty conservative estimate. But if I'm going to a boot camp, this is my objective. I am going to be the number one person. I'm going to work harder than anyone else. I'm going to apply myself more than anyone else. If it's within my ability, I am going to, and especially it's an intensive program, right? You're doing this for 3 months, like a full-time job or more, 10, 12 hours a day. Freaking bring it all. Go all in on this and be, because, and this is why I'm saying this, is because I feel like if you take some basic steps, right? If you filter and make sure that you've got at least a semi-quality boot camp, right? And you are aiming at being in the top top one, but let's say top 5 or top 10% of the boot camp realistically, because there might be some genius. You might have what's his name, Doogie Howser in there, and he might
Right.
just whoop the pants off you no matter what you do. But if you're aiming for the number one slot, you're almost guaranteed success. And I mean, this is so much the truth in life in general, right? But this is how I would hack the boot camp, right? Like in my mind, I'm thinking there's no way you fail if you take this approach. Where you fail is when you take the half-ass approach. When you're like this, when you're like, oh, gee, Bob, I'd like to get a software developer job because those guys make a lot of freaking money. My friend Joe has a software developer job. So, what should I do? Should I learn on my own, like do some courses online? Nah. College, I don't want to really spend 4 years. Oh, there's a boot camp for 8 weeks. I'm going to sign up for this boot camp, and they said they'll get me ready and get me a job. If that's your attitude and you go in and you think that somehow magically you're going to go into this program and then 8 weeks later you're going to get a 6-figure developer job, no, sorry, it's not going to happen. But if you're like, man, I really want to become a developer and I'm willing to do what it takes and I'm learning on my own as much as I can in preparation for this boot camp, I'm going to sign up for this thing and I'm going to put my all in it. I'm going to stay after. I'm going to tutor other people in the class. I'm going to get as much help as I can and see if I can help the instructor, right? I'm going to really devote my life to this and try to be the top person in this class. Yeah, I don't see how you could possibly fail if you have the second attitude. But the first one, it is guaranteed failure almost.
I agree with most of that. I was having this conversation with someone at work as well, and I have a couple additional heuristics, but I don't know because I think it's still a little bit early. But one of them is finding a place that has teachers, the instructors that work or have worked at jobs you would want.
Oh, that's a good point.
So if so here we're in the San Francisco, Silicon Valley, if you want to work at Uber, find a boot camp that has, instructors that came from Uber. A couple reasons. One is because they'll help you with what you need to be able to do to get a job there. And the second one is because, they have a network or either are still there, and that can definitely help with placement of like we were already talking about, the top people. The best people are going to get the referrals, and they're going to refer people because that helps them. It's a self-fulfilling thing. Like if they refer the best people, it increases their instructor aptitude. It increases their college, like everything at the boot camp, everything gets better. So that's one. And the second one is sort of similar, which is do a boot camp if possible in an area you would like to have the job for basically the same reasons. So if you want to work in the Silicon Valley, my advice would be to find a boot camp in Silicon Valley because you're going to have peers graduating and instructors that have connections in that area. If you do one, and I don't know where all the large boot camps are, but if you do one in Florida, hoping to get a job in California, it can happen, but you're just not helping your odds.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's really good points. Yeah.
Yeah. The other, again, I have a huge bias in this because my grandfather was a math professor, his father was a math professor, my dad's was an engineer, and so a ton of academic sort of people in my family, and so I'm always in the mindset go to college, but the thing that I totally believe is that college gives you the lower bar. In other words, you can get a degree and be let's say incompetent, and you have that diploma. So it will take the worst people and bring them up. But college won't necessarily take the best people and give them the best possible experience, right? So I think it's sort of a toss-up. I mean, I think if you already went to college for biology, let's say, it's probably not a good idea to go back through another 4 years to get a CS degree. That's something I agree with. But either way, I think the goal should be to be the best. And this is true even if you want to be any career. I feel like anything I say, I will disparage that career. So I'm not going to pick anything out. But no matter what you want to be, is the goal is to go into it. Look at the best people in that career, and you should want to be to have the same sort of career experiences as those people, and that should be kind of your target. Like if you want to be a basketball player, with people who want. I actually went to basketball camp when I was in high school. I was terrible at basketball. But I went to basketball camp, and there were people who said, I want to be like Shaq, or I want to be like Anthony Hardaway, who was, popular at the time. And they had sort of role models, and they had kind of targets, and they had sort of respect for that. And I feel like it's the same kind of thing where know what it means to be the best person at whether it's your university or your boot camp class or what have you, and then strive to sort of be better than that person, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're dead on. It's funny. I was talking with a friend of mine, and he's talking about his kid being in Little League, and how the kid was being benched all the time, and he wasn't. And I told him, I said, there's a real simple solution to this rather than complain to the coach. So how many hours a day do the other kids practice? Right?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they just go to their practice, and I think some of their star players, they'll do like an extra hour of practice every day. And I was like, just tell your son, if he really wants to never be benched again, put in 4 hours of practice a day, 3 hours of practice, whatever it is, whatever they're doing, do twice it.
Yep.
Guaranteed in 6 months or one season, guaranteed you'll be starting. You'll be so much better. Like, just do whatever the best person's doing and double it, or do better than whatever the best person's doing. Look at their training and do more of it. And it's when I say it, it sounds so damn simple, but it's one of those things that you get frustrated and you're like, I don't understand. Like, I can never be like that. But the answer is really a lot. It's putting on the overalls. That's it.
Yeah, and I think one of the great sort of tragedies is, I grew up in a part of my city where a lot of people played basketball and not a lot of people went into really engineering, and I found myself being really bad at I played basketball for years. I was terrible at it the whole time, and in hindsight, I never really practiced. Like, even I went to this camp, I wasn't really actively participating, and it just wasn't really my thing. It wasn't really what I did for fun. But then, the things that I did do for fun, like I did all sorts of like coding things. Was into Linux, like kernel hacking and things like that, and emulators. And these things, I ended up spending just an extraordinary amount of time on them. And the reality is, there's people who are spending an unbelievable amount of time practicing, let's say, basketball, and there really aren't that many people who are spending that amount of time, becoming the best JavaScript developer or something like that. I mean, obviously there are people, but it's just not the same, let's say, ratio of people who are dedicating, let's say, 100 hours a week to JavaScript versus the number of jobs. That ratio is totally different than a number of people who are dedicating 100 hours a week to football versus a number of football jobs, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you've got, it's an arbitrage situation, right? You've got a huge advantage. Like, the bar is actually pretty low, right? As far as, like, if you wanted to become the best in the world at JavaScript, it's conceivable. If you want to be the best in the world at basketball, good luck. I mean, right? As much as you practice, but you could do it at JavaScript. Honestly, you could, right? That's the bar. The bar is low there. You just have to be willing to do the work and.
We're being so mean to JavaScript programmers.
Poor JavaScript. Yeah. Actually, somebody told me. I said I was talking to somebody at work, and they said, "Oh, you have a podcast. I'll follow you on Twitter." And so they followed me. So I looked up their profile, and they have something like 10,000 followers. And I said, how did you get so many followers on Twitter? And he said, dude, I'm a JavaScript developer. It's like, all you have to do is be a JavaScript developer. You get 20 times as many followers on Twitter. So we give them a lot of hate, but they're also probably the biggest community. It's absolutely astounding.
Yeah, it's funny. I did one of my more popular blog posts, like for a while. I did this blog post on why JavaScript is dead or doomed. JavaScript is doomed, and this was like 4 or 5 years ago, and it went front page on Hacker News, and that was like the worst thing. Like, I was crawling under my desk crying because The nasty comments I got. Oh my gosh, it was just and streams of them like for days. It was like, I hope you die.
Oh
I will find your children and murder them.
Oh, geez.
Like it was.
Well, if you want to hear worse
horrible.
comments, write such an article about any functional programming.
Oh my
language.
gosh, yeah, our Lisp show
Lisp
was
is dead.
unbelievable.
Haskell is dead. Just pick any of them.
Yeah,
Closure.
I mean, we actually, you know, I learned Lisp. I don't know if it was my second language, but anyone who took Intro to AI had to learn Lisp, and so I was, you know, I was a Lisp sort of sympathizer. I didn't know that much about it, but I took the course and I liked it. And when Patrick and I did this show on Lisp, we got just unbelievable hate mail. People were just like, "Oh, you don't understand. It's really like this is, you know, you have to use this other expression, and they've moved on for." And it was just unbelievable. It just never ended.
It's funny. It's funny how, you know, sometimes we get so religious about technology and stuff, and ultimately it's like results at the end of the day. Like the academic like exercises are great, but ultimately like what is it that you're actually accomplishing and doing? And that's it's easy to get distracted and forget that that's the whole point.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other part of it is, you know, as you also is to keep a good network of people, right? Like, for example, if you start to become the best JavaScript person in the world, then you're going to, let's say you seek out some people who you think are great at JavaScript, and then you get so good or you know so much about the language that these people aren't really, you know, reading their posts, let's say, isn't informing you. Like we did a post on cryptocurrency. We're going to release a show on cryptocurrency that will be out by the time you see this show, hear this show. And, you know, let's say you're going to get to the point, if you're into cryptocurrency, where that show is going to be boring to you, right?
Right.
And when that happens, you got to find the person who can sort of inspire you, the person who knows way more about cryptocurrency than Patrick and I. And eventually you'll know more than that person. You have to constantly be seeking out that advancement. And as you do that, you'll notice the community, even if it's a global community, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And it also gets more intimate. And you'll start to build those relationships that ultimately will be bridges to new opportunities.
Oh yeah, definitely. And if you're in that level of that inner circle, I mean, you'll never be looking for a job. There's because there's so few, right? And everyone, it's that weird thing where it takes another expert to recognize an expert. Like someone like to the novice, someone who's like at the 80 percentile and someone who's at the 99 percentile look the same. Right. But to the person who's like up in the 90 percentile of something, they know they're like, yeah, okay, this guy is like 1% better. That, like, you know, like think super marathon runners, right? That understand the difference between like a couple of seconds in a marathon time. Like it's a huge deal, right? So I think that's definitely the case. And once you become part of that inner circle, it becomes extremely valuable.
So the anecdote I'll share about that is at work we do C++ programming. So we often ask candidates, you know, what is their experience with C++? And we have this joke that, you know, on a scale, and we ask each other, like, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate yourself as far as like C++ experience? And a lot of people, and it's not meant to be a trick question, but it's very revealing. Yeah. Because anyone who's like out of college and rates themselves above a 5 is almost guaranteed to be sort of never done much programming. You know, when you start talking to them and you ask, it's very clear they've not done much programming. Yeah, right. And so we all, you know, kind of compare our scores, and most people, and a lot of people I think are very knowledgeable in C++, will rate themselves like 5, 6, and they've been doing C++ programming 5, 6, 7 years. And we were sort of talking like, we don't think anyone would be a 10, you know, maybe Herb Sutter would be like a 9. Right. You know, people who, you know, write the standard template library are probably like an 8. People who go to CPPCon are like a 7. People have been doing like 10 to 15 years, like a 6, right? Like the scale is really strict, but it's almost universal across everybody at work. It's very consistent.
Right.
And it's very clear, as you're pointing out, people who don't fit in, and it's not like a mean thing, but it just instantly reveals how long someone's been doing something.
No, you just have to ask who's your favorite author, and if it's not Scott Myers, then then you can't be more than a 5. Yeah. It's funny. I was real big into the C. Actually, it's funny. When I was a big C++ developer when I started out, and I thought I was hot shot. I thought I was good until I went to Top Coder. It's kind of an old thing. But man, I went into there and I went into the single room. I went into the SRMs, those single room matches.
Yep.
And I was like, I can't even solve the easy problem, right? So I had to learn STL, and I had to read, and so then my head is in. I read effective C++, probably 10 times more effective C++, effective STL. I'm learning all of the STL inside and out, the Boost library, right? All this stuff. Right, that I had no idea. I'd been doing C++ development for 3-4 years, no idea about any of this stuff. I was just getting by, and I thought I was good, right? And then after that experience, man, could I ace I could ace a C++ interview like nobody's business at that point, and I would give C++ interviews, and I had this 8-page C++, and it would start off at easy questions, and it'd go to medium, and it'd go to hard, and it'd go to very hard, and I swear people would apply for jobs. I was working at HP at the time, and I was the worst. You would never want to interview me at HP. I was a dick, basically. Just because I was so excited about, I was.
Yes, we know
Scott
this
Myers
type.
was my idol,
Yeah.
and it's funny how things have changed, but I would have this, 8 and people would come in and they'd profess to be these C++ gurus, and they wouldn't make it past page 1. And so, there was, I remember this one guy, I still remember his name, Hai Biao, and he got it all. And I was just I was trying to explain to my hiring manager, I was like, look, you don't need to do this. We're done. You just hire this guy. I don't even care if he's the most socially retarded person you've ever seen in your life. You have to hire this guy. You don't understand. And he couldn't grasp how important and phenomenal it is. But it's funny. It's so true. You know it when you see it. The things that people say, the language that they use, and it's that inner circle that you can recognize within each other.
Yeah, there's this idea of I can't remember the 4 levels, but I'll try to kind of piece it together. But there's unconscious ignorance, where you don't really know what you don't know. And then what you really want, the hardest step, is that step from unconscious to conscious ignorance. As you said, in the case of Top Coder, it's that going on Top Coder, realizing, whoa, there's this whole world. Because once you get to that step, that's where you can start the stepping stones. That's where you can kind of get that sort of gradient that takes you to conscious knowledge, and then eventually to unconscious knowledge, which is kind of circling all the way back to where you don't even really have to think about it. It's just in your unconscious. It just happens naturally. But getting back to the connections thing, in 2004, I was the 30th person on Top Coder, so I was ranked number 30.
Jason does not relate to your story about struggling through this single. I'm just telling you.
I went on Top Coder a couple of years ago, or about 18 months ago, and I was just terrible. And the reality is, it's been I guess almost a decade. It's been over a decade since I was sort of at my sort of peak on Top Coder, and I moved on to sort of other skills. I moved on to sort of, building things that entertain me, and sort of kind of putting pieces together, and less, I still do. I actually moved on to a lot more kind of statistics and math, and away from the algorithms and data structures. And it just, the bike got rusty, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing I didn't lose was, again, the connections. A lot of the top Coder people, I know them pretty well. I stay in contact with them. We go out every now and then. And that's the thing that's kind of permanent. It's still super important to get the skills, but along the way, take the almost free opportunity to also connect with the people, because ultimately that's the thing that either it never goes away, or it's very easy to bring it back. It's very easy to send an email and say, hey, a long time no see. It's much harder to get back into the red target rank at top coder. Trust me, it's almost impossible.
Oh man, that's cool. Yeah, I don't talk to many people that have actually done top coder. That you're a number 30. That's pretty impressive. That like people that haven't done this don't realize how amazing of an achievement that is. It's
and that
tough.
was through. By the way, that was through just unbelievable effort. Like basically, I used to practice. I think it was something like 40 or 50 hours a week. And we did that. So my university has this programming competition kind of, or programming team kind of a thing at the university. And if you join, you have to commit to practicing for about 40 or 50 hours a week. And it's just a ton of effort. But and it's the kind of thing where if you don't, it's just like being, trying to be an expert in anything. If you at some level, it requires like extraordinary maintenance. But yeah, I mean, with the right amount of effort, especially in a field like this, like anybody can make like enormous progress.
I think that's also a sign of maturity, is choosing that you don't have to be the best at everything, right? So saying like, we're joking about the C++ skill, but I don't think it's perfectly fine for people to be a 5 or 6, like, and be paid a lot of money to write C++ code. It's okay. You don't have to be 8, 9, And I think that's a sign of maturity, is getting past that and realizing like some things just may not be worth the effort at that time.
Well, and before I forget, a real good book I want to recommend is called Peak. It's a really good book on deliberate practice, and it talks about the idea that essentially like forget what Malcolm Gladwell said. He's not accurate, but the guy that wrote Peak is actually the guy that came up with the 10,000 hour concept that Malcolm Gladwell borrowed and misused. Unfortunately, I'm not a big Malcolm Gladwell.
We couldn't tell.
But because I believe that it's skill, because I believe it is practice. And that book Peak it really talks about, and he has the studies to prove it and shows why, that it is more than anything else, not intelligence, not IQ, not anything else, not natural ability or talent. It's practice that makes someone at the higher level, at the highest levels, right?
The other thing, not to jump around too much, but getting back to sort of the financial thing, I've met a lot of people in my career who I would consider retired. Some people because of their family, some people because of circumstances, and some people because they are total rock stars. And the thing I notice about most of them is they're still working, and working might be it might change, but you don't really see people, this sort of stereotypical, like, I'm going to win the lottery, or maybe that's a bad example, but I'm going to, do some kind of financial situation, and then I'm going to go to Hawaii and do nothing. And the reality is, there might be some people out there who they set their whole vision and all their effort and everything is just financial. But the majority of people I noticed who put themselves in what I would call the retirement category, which means that they're just kind of there for fun. Those are the people who sort of had that incredible passion, and there's massive inertia there. Like the kind of people I've met who can just, leave their job at any time are the same people who are there just because they love it. Like it's very hard to do something you love and get nothing out of it for years. It's very hard to do something you don't love and get nothing out of it for years and keep that going, right? But if it's something you love and you have sort of, a vision for where you want to be that doesn't really depend on anybody else, then you can continue to make progress, and you can sort of build this model in your mind and continue to get better and better. And that's where sort of there's really no limit, because you're competing with yourself. And those are the people I notice who tend to do kind of really well.
Oh, yeah. It's funny that you should say that, the Hawaii thing, especially because that was so from a young age, one of my goals in life was I wanted to retire young, right? And I started doing real estate investment when I was 19. I don't want to pretend like I had a plan then. I just didn't want to pay rent. But later I did develop a plan, and I spent a lot. I mean, I slept on mattresses on the floor. Like, I mean, I put a lot of effort into this goal. Like, this was my dream. I wanted to retire young in life so that I could do whatever I wanted. So, and in my mind, I was like, I just play video games all day. This will be awesome, right? I'm going to go live on the beach. Okay. Like, all this stuff. Like, I want my time. And so about 4, I guess it's been 4 years, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I hit it. I did it. And coming up to it, I started to have when I could see the end goal in sight, I was like, I'm going to be able to quit my job and I'm going to have passive income for the rest of my life, and I wanted to have like 10K a month of passive income. So it's not like just living in a hut somewhere. Right. It's like, a decent lifestyle. And so I was coming close to that, and I started to have these this kind of panic. I was like, well, what am I going to do, right? And my plan was, and I did it. I quit my job. I went to Maui. Okay.
Oh,
and
you actually did it.
I did, and I did that for about 2 months, and when I came back, I was like, no, I can't. I was strongly concerned just staying there forever, And I was like, no, I can't do this. I don't need to work, right? So my definition of retired is not like sitting on the porch or just surfing all day. It's like you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. But you doesn't mean you don't choose to. And that's what I came back with my renewed mission, and I kind of really had to really do some really deep thinking on. I mean, if you ever get to that point in life, most people are so busy living life that they never really think about life. And when you get to that point, and here's a good exercise, if you ever want to just think about, and it takes some meditation on this, but imagine if you woke up with $500 million in the bank tomorrow, what would you do? And spend some time meditating on the question, because most of the answers that you first come up with are things that actually are things that would make you money. I use a big number like that, like 500 million, because it doesn't make sense to build a business. It doesn't make you go through a whole list. Like if you go through the exercise, you'll start to rule stuff out, because as you go to the end of the line, you'll say, oh wow, yeah, that would be to make money, but I don't need any money. So it's kind of a scary process, but I had to go really do some deep thinking, and that's where I'm at. With SimpleProgrammer now is yes, I make money. Yes, I'm still make profit from the company, of course, but there's a bigger purpose, and just in my life in general that I found, which is not about those goals. Again, it's about becoming the best version of myself, about pushing my limits, about reaching my full potential, and it's something that I'll never reach the end of, right? So I don't have this problem anymore, but now it's like, how can I best utilize the time that I have to really maximize whatever potential that I could achieve during this time, not for an end goal, not so that I can make so much money, not so that I could do play video games all day, right? I have all those options, but it has a different purpose. And so, I mean, it's really hard to describe, but it's funny that you said that about going to Hawaii, because that was exactly my thinking in my scenario. And and people all the time, when I tell them I tell a story on my YouTube channel, they're like, oh, you're crazy. If I win the lottery, I would I'm like, no, the worst thing that could possibly happen to you is to just to come into an infusion of cash. It would ruin your life. It would ruin your character. It would ruin everything, because everything you're dreaming for, everything you're aiming for, would suddenly you'd have it, and then you'd lose purpose. And when you lose purpose, everything it's horrible. So it's just interesting.
This is a good thought exercise for people who want to understand this. Is get your favorite video game, right, and then go online and find the way to sort of cheat in that game. Like let's take Grand Theft Auto. Let's say you're a huge Grand Theft Auto fan. Now they have the version online, which I don't know much about, but I assume you can't really cheat on the internet. But let's take Grand Theft Auto 3. Let's say that's your favorite game. You spent all the time unlocking the t-shirts and getting all the cars and stuff. Now go in that game, start over, and use the cheat code, which gives you infinite money and the ability to fly. Right, like Superman, right? And see how long you'll play that game. I guarantee you it won't be more than a week, right? It's going to be amazing. You can fly, you could drop helicopters from the sky or something. But after a week, it's done. It actually kind of killed the sort of narrative and the novelty and the experience of that game, right? And I would imagine winning the lottery is kind of like doing that to your life, right? Like it sort of it doesn't really kind of, it all of a sudden just throws all of your kind of goals and your values kind of out of whack.
Exactly. Yep. I totally agree. That's a great comparison. It's so true, right? Yeah. It's funny. I'm playing I'm playing the Zelda Breath of the Wild game. And I'm like, I am not looking on the internet for anything. There's some stuff I'm like, I don't understand how these recipes work and stuff. And I'm like, no, because as soon as I look up anything, it will ruin the entire game for me. I just want to figure it all out and discover it myself.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same boat. I played Final Fantasy VII, which is considered one of the best video games of all time, and I played it, a very long time ago. And I'd completed Final Fantasy, I think 4 and 6 and 2. I don't remember. This was all a long time ago. But I was playing through 7, and I wasn't even stuck. I was just there was one part where it was a little bit open-ended. You can kind of go to different towns. It wasn't exactly clear what to do next. And instead of kind of exploring, I thought, let me go on the internet and just see. And once I went on the internet, I realized, I missed this part back here, and I can never go back and get it, and it's done. And it actually just killed the whole game. I realized, I'd kind of, you stare into the mirror, and the mirror stares back at you or whatever. It was just, it literally killed the game for me, and I haven't been able to. I haven't played it since. It's the same kind of thing. It's actually kind of a little dangerous to do that.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I mean, that's my philosophy in life. And again, a lot of people doubt it on YouTube, but all the time I get people, because there's always, my YouTube channel is kind of a fitness YouTube channel as well, right? Because I do a lot of stuff, and so all the time I get accused of being on steroids. And I'm like, I can't, there's nothing I go, tests or whatever. I can't prove that I'm not on steroids. But what I could tell you this is that if you listen to any of my videos in my life philosophy, you would know that I would never take a shortcut, because I'm not about the end result. I'm about who I become, the process, right? And it's like, it's so hard to communicate this point to people that are, as much as I argue this point, or so many people are still like, no, I would still want to win the lottery. It would still be awesome. I would give the money to my family. And I'm like, no, you, anything that you achieve that you haven't earned, right? It's like that. I'll get flack for this, but I'll say it anyway, because I run 40 miles a week, and I ran a marathon a couple weeks ago, and there's people that will sign up for the marathon and they'll walk. And I mean, if you're 90, that's fine. But if you're a capable human being and you're just walking a marathon in order to get a medal, I'm sorry. I don't have a problem. That. That's fine. I'm not saying it because I'm judging you as a person. I'm just saying you are gypping yourself. How much when you put that when I put the medal, I've got a rack. You guys can't see it here, but I've got my medals for my half marathons and my marathons, and my marathon medal to me. When I look at that, means something, right? I can look at that and I'm like, man, that was 4.5 hours. It wasn't just 4.5 hours. It was weeks and months worth of work and effort and blood and sweat and tears, right? And if you are this overweight person who signs up for a marathon and walks it and didn't do any training, and you get the medal and you put that on your wall, what is it? It's just to show other people. It doesn't mean anything to you. You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing. It's it's so hard to communicate that concept to people. It's the same people that say, I want to win the lottery, or I just want the 6-figure job. I don't care if I actually know the programming, I just want to get lucky and get the job. And it's all those things. It's if you haven't earned it, yeah, it might be fun to fly around in the video game, like you said, but it's going to be so meaningless and empty to you that you start to think that all of life is like that, and you forget that that the meaningful things in life are the things that you actually it's that money you put together that you earn mowing lawns to buy that bicycle. That's what makes everything in life valuable, and it's so easy to get disconnected from that. I mean, I've been guilty of it. We've all been guilty of it, but it's so hard to communicate across that chasm, I find.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and go ahead, Patrick.
No, I was going to say, so I'm not much of a quote person, but my quote is Warren Buffett saying that his goal was not to leave his kids enough money to do nothing, but just enough to do anything. Oh, I got it backwards. I think the goal is to leave your kids enough money to do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing.
Yeah,
it's sort of the same philosophy. Yeah, like your point is to be able to do enough that you open doors, not so much that you can just sit around and do nothing. That's really boring. The analogy was if you were on the Notch who invented Minecraft, if you followed his Twitter feed right around the time like Microsoft bought out Minecraft.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I don't know how many people did this, and I don't know.
Yeah,
him
I was
personally,
following him even before that, and I won't spoil your story, but I heard it.
No, it's okay, but I feel like a little bit this happened to him. Like he had other games that he was in the process. Now he suddenly, he already didn't need to work, but he still was. But to get sort of that major payout, he bought a really big house. He could pretty much do anything he wanted, and I didn't kind of keep following him, but he basically had a little bit of like a meltdown. Like he kind of lost direction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was posting. You folks can look it up, but basically things like, I have nothing in my life. The people who worked at my company feel like I sold them out. I have no friends, stuff like that. And it's kind of sad,
Oh yeah, and people, and the nasty thing about it, being in that situation, is not only did he honestly feel that way, people doubted his sincerity, and then they were upset at him because he was expressing these feelings and saying you have no right to have these feelings, because if I were in your situation, I would be happy. And that is just, that's going to make him feel even worse. But it's the human condition. And so like, if you don't figure out how to deal with this, right? Like this is one of those things, like I tell people all the time, like, well, but like I had to face this, like you said, looking into the abyss, and the abyss stared back at me. Yeah, that I had to face this, and I'm telling you, and he definitely had to face this. But like, you got to think about this ahead of time and really figure out your life, because if your life is just about hitting some number or hitting some goals, man, like you're setting yourself up for such a. How many rock stars, how many like people that come into fame, right, or end up making a lot of money or becoming super famous people? How many of them end up committing suicide or getting into just like their whole life becomes drugs because they're hugely depressed? Like, this is not just because they're defective people that don't know how to handle fame or money. It's because this is what most people will be like if they haven't actually thought about this and haven't really figured out how to live a purposeful life that is not just driven based on some goal, right? To tie it back into the systems versus goals from the beginning. But
yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, yeah, we could talk about this forever. I think it's fascinating. Hopefully, maybe we'll have you back later on, like sometime in the future.
Sure.
But this was awesome. So, if is there anything? Actually, I think you kind of alluded to it in the beginning. There's a book that you have coming out pretty soon, right?
Yeah. Allow me to plug my book.
Yeah.
So
that was your opening.
There we go. So I have a book. It should be out, assuming that July 19th is the launch date, assuming that those got around the same time. Mm-hmm. And it is called The Complete Software Developer's Career Guide, and it is a massive book. We're talking like right now the estimated page count is 800 pages.
Wow.
And it is everything I know about software development from my 15-year career and everything that I have gathered from. I know, I've hung out with a lot of industry experts. I won't do a bunch of name dropping here, but obviously, with SimpleProgrammer on YouTube and everything, I coach people and I've gathered a lot of career advice and wisdom over this time, and I've basically put it into what I'm calling my goal in creating this book was to make the book that every software developer should have on their bookshelf, like no question about it. And I spent a lot of time working on this. It basically, to give you a quick overview, it has everything from it's broken into 5 sections. The first section is how to get started. If you don't know anything about software development, what language to learn, should you go to college, boot camp, self-taught, how to learn a language. The second section is how to get a job, whether it be your first job or your experience, and then how to negotiate your salary, how to like choose between contract or permanent employment, like all these kind of stuff that no one really talks about that is really important, and how to do a resume, all kinds of stuff related to that. And then the third section is all this stuff you need to know as a software developer. I gathered like all of the like CVS and source control and continuous integration and what is web development versus backend development versus mobile, like all of that stuff. And then the fourth section is how to work as a software developer. So this is like stuff like how do you deal with your boss? How do you deal with your coworkers? How do you deal with discrimination or prejudice in the workspace? How do you dress for work, right? Like this is all targeted towards software developers. And then the fifth section is how to advance your career. So you've got all the other stuff down. What if you wanted to go and start speaking at conferences? What if you wanted to start a podcast? What if you wanted to, go beyond and become a freelancer and bill a few $100s an hour? Like how would you do this? And so that the book that's why it's massive, is because it tries to cover pretty much all of that at a pretty in-depth level. And so yeah, it's going to be launching July 19th, and I will be doing the Kindle version of it for 99 cents for that day.
Oh, wow.
Normally it'll be normally it'd be $9.99. I'm not sure what I'm going to price the print version, just because it's such a thick book. I've got to get a quote. I'm working on getting it typeset right now, so okay. I'm guessing it'll be heavily discounted on launch day as well. But yeah, so it's the goal for this launch, by the way, too, is to be the #1 best-selling book on Amazon on that day, like across all categories.
So what's the title one more time?
The Complete Software Developer's Career Guide. And so cool. Actually, if you want to check it out, if you just go to simpleprogrammer.com/career guide, it'll be the book landing page pre-launch. And then cool. On the launch, it'll have like bonuses. I think we've got a package that we're putting together, like $150 bonus package of course material as well. That will all for 99 cents. So
cool, and we'll have the link on the show notes as well for people.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Looking forward to checking out that book. I'll definitely pick it up for 99 cents. I buy almost every Humble bundle where you spend $1 and you get 3 games. And,
that's like your limit. $1.
Yeah. Well, you could. Anyways, but even if like no matter what, I will spend $1. I won't even look at the games. When they send me the email for the new bundle, I spend $1. And sometimes I spend more if the other games look good. But I recently did this. I spent $1. I got this game. It had terrible reviews, and all the reviews kind of said, look, the game looks beautiful, but the gameplay is kind of messed up. And the developers released this patch saying, oh, we made all these fixes, right? And I played it, and it was amazing. And they had just fixed the problems, and they had just gotten a bad rap, right? The book that I tell everyone to read was Negotiating for Dummies. I got that for $1. Nice. And it was one of these kind of flash sales, and so I'll definitely pick this up for $1 and check it out.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. Hopefully, like I said, this has been crazy trying to put all this launch together and writing this book. But I really want this to be a book that every developer can put on their bookshelf, because I feel like it's been lacking. Like this kind of advice. I put the book together because I felt like I didn't want to write another book. Trust me, after writing my first book, but I just felt like I have to put this out there. So.
Cool. Well, thank you. And SimpleProgrammer.com is the site. We'll also have the link to in the show notes and all that. And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. You guys are awesome.
All right, thanks. Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.
The intro music is Axo by Binar Pilot. Programming Throwdown is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 2.0 license. You're free to share, copy, distribute, transmit the work, to remix, adapt the work, but you must provide attribution to Patrick and I, and share alike in kind.